starting to prep the transmission for installation. First step is to make sure that it's in reverse gear. Simple enough. We'll take this off. Obviously, we just put this on here to give us the leverage. This rubber boot was on this housing. We took that off to get that out of the way. So she's in reverse. Remember, we've tested the transmission. It shifts correctly. They're very adamant. They mention in this step again to make sure that you have done that. Next step, we're going to remove these two small hex bolts and release this clamp. So I'm going to get to that now. Disregard. That removed this billet piece here. You want to go back on one way. You can see that it's thicker on the bottom. Those two smaller bolts we use the 5/32 for. Okay. And one thing I think is, they mentioned noting the orientation. I think that has to do with this piece here. So, yeah, I'm gonna even film it so I remember. This is the orientation that mine came out on. Can you see that? Okay, with that off, they do say you may want to remove this plate with these 6 bolts. Honestly, I don't know if I want to do that. So this may be as far as we go for this, because I believe that would open up the internals of the transmission, and then once you get it up there, you got to figure out how you're going to get those back on. So I'm going to go with no on that. All right, continuing the prep. They give you the option right now anyways to fill the transmission with 2.7 quarts of fluid. Make sure that this plug is in. I'm going to opt to fill that later. They do mention that if you didn't fill it during assembly, that once the transmission, you can do it then. I'd rather not play with the fluid being in there. This is what came with the kit. I don't know if I showed this before. They give you the Fram ATF as break-in fluid, and then the Valvoline Synchro Mesh as your final fluid. Honestly, I'm going to use the Valvoline for break-in end. Then I'll just buy some more. I'm sure that using the Dextron 3 ATF would be fine. That's just my choice. I'm gonna do the break-in with the Valvoline. All right, so ready to start putting this thing in. So wish us luck. We have it strapped to our OSHA-approved block of wood. Everything seems to be lined up properly. So we're going to lower the engine down and start feeding it in. We got to watch this going into that hole as well. Alright, we are finding that this plate here is stopping us from being able to go in straight. So I'm taking out the 6 Allen head bolts and removing that plate. Alright, so we are sucked into the bell housing. We got to a point, I'd say half, 3/4 of an inch. It was a little stuck. My son Dom went up top, depressed the clutch, and I was able to slide it right in. So it's sitting at an angle right now because of the way that it sits on the jacks, the stand here. So, we're going to work to get these bolts started, get that all snugged back up, and then I got to put this plate back on at some point. Okay, so to get that shift linkage up, I applied pressure from the driver's side over, like hard pressure, and while my son jacked the transmission jack up, and we were able to get that past. It scraped a little bit on the you can see the undercoating, but it seems fine. So now we got to try and get that plate, that billet plate, back up there, and then we're going to start installing the bracket and the C-beam. So we're getting there. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I used the yoke from the kit to be able to turn the input shaft while we were setting her in. Bolts are all torqued 50 foot-pounds for the instructions, so those are all torqued in a crisscross pattern, looking good. So yeah, I mean, we still have work to do, but it's in the car. Pretty happy. Okay, so we got this beautiful bracket piece that we need to mount to our C-beam. The fit is perfect. Slides right in. We're going to use the factory bolts. It does say to do this on the bench, I believe. Yes. Yep. They want you to mount this together on the bench before, and then put it up as a complete unit. So that's what we're gonna do. So see you in a few. So here's how we're looking from the inside. See our new hole that we cut. Shifter coming through. I got that plate back on. I'm just gonna kind of test fit, or maybe even just straight up install the shifter back on here. Make sure I don't need to make any modifications to this hole. So we have that on there now. Then when we raise the transmission up into place, we'll know if it's hitting. So, and here's our ignition lockout. I'm just going to pop that out of the bracket and get it out of the way for now. I plan on dealing with that when I finish up the interior. Okay, again, remembering the orientation, we got this plastic cup. We got this plastic cup under here. Gonna get one of these started. Just remember, this is the one side started. This was under a little bit of tension. All right, the other side started. Just gonna snug those down. Alright, I'm going to keep working those in. I'll be right back. Alright, here we go. Everything's bolted back up. And hopefully we get the clearance we need. We're going to start working on the C-beam down underneath and raising this into place. Alright, we're going to start mocking up the C-beam. Put the bracket loosely on the C-beam on the bench. I'm going to feed this up over the parking brake cable to the differential first, and then figure out how to line this thing up. I imagine we'll have to lift the transmission to get it in line. But, alright, let's see what happens. get it past it? No, I can't. Huh. In the way after all. Alright, we'll be back when we figure this out. So the issue we're running into is getting the C-beam with the bracket installed up into the car here. So I can get the C-beam in by itself, but I then can't get the bracket on. One thing, I have my parking brake cable here. That makes me have to come in at a pretty steep angle to get over that. So what I'm going to try right now is if I remove that and I'm able to come up straight with the C-beam and see if that makes any difference. So that's where we're at. Okay, just an update here. I've had to go to the BFH and I am tapping this back and up as much whenever I can. Yeah, it doesn't go in easy, folks. I am generally somebody who tries to try everything with a lighter touch first, but I'm having to beat on this pretty good with that rubber mallet. So I don't think it's hurting anything. It's just not what I really like to do typically. So working at it. Okay, we've had some success. When the instructions say work this in, they mean work it in. One thing I did note, so you have this, it's kind of hard to see, this piece of this bracket that is notched to go around the tail of the transmission. Well, that stuck out to a point where it was going metal, it was going to go metal to metal on the transmission. I removed this bolt, which allowed the bracket to pivot and get past that point. I then was able to get the nut back on there. Everything's kind of been, I mean, it's fitting, but everything's been a little bit of a struggle. So one thing we noticed too is you got this third bolt you're supposed to put in, and that's backed right up against the fiberglass. There's no way for me to get that bolt in. So I'm gonna have to work on that from the top, and you can see I chipped some paint off of here, off of that, trying to get this in. I gotta work this from the top. I'm probably gonna have to notch more of the fiberglass, which I guess that is what it is, to get that bolt in. If I jack the transmission up more, this bracket bottoms out against the fiberglass here, and yeah, the transmission keeps moving, but the bracket doesn't, so that's not going to work. On the back end, we did get these bolts in. This just took some kind of back and forth getting the bolts lined up right. Either raise or low in the transmission. I actually think I hung on the C-beam at one point while my son pushed the bolts in, but it does line up. So now we're just tightening it up, buttoning it up down here, and I got to figure out that, like I said, that third bolt up top there. So that's where we're at. All right, so we're back up top. We're going to get to that third bolt on the side there that's being blocked by the transmission tunnel, but this also gives us a first look of the shifter coming through the opening and how that all works. What we're going after is this screw right here. You can see it's all nice and lined up, but it is completely blocked by the transmission tunnel. So I'm going to cut that out so I can get that bolt in there. We'll see how that goes. Alright, so this is what I came up with to clear that bolt. As you can see how much it sticks out. There's no way you couldn't cut that. So I've been talking to Silver Sport Transmission. I'm going to send them a picture of this just so they can see.
I can guarantee you everything's in the right spot. So I also had to work that bolt pretty good to get it to line up, and I loosened everything back up everywhere, tried everything I could, and it just took a little bit of doing, but she's in there. Alright, so what we have to do now is drill 2 holes, 2 1/4-inch holes in the lowest part of this pocket for drainage. So the way the scoop's definitely here is a low point, and I'm gonna probably maybe, I don't know, do here, see what we can figure out. But that's what's up next. Alright, so I just put both of my 1/4-inch holes right down here. It's by far the lowest point, so I'm going to call that good enough. One thing to note, this is the first time the transmission is being supported by itself. Now take a look underneath. So, back underneath the car, and like I said, this is the first time it is supporting itself. C-beam connected on both ends, torqued, everything's torqued to specification, and it's in the car. Obviously still a lot more to do, but this is a big step. Alright, we're getting started on the drive shaft, swapping the yoke out. You can see the difference here. On the right is the stock yoke, on the left is the one for the TKX. You can obviously see the difference. So I'm going to use the old shop press and get that swapped over. Okay, here's another look at the yoke differences. We just realized the thickness difference here, and the Moog U-joint that they send you is fatter on one end. I was trying to use the spicers that I just put in the drive shaft, but quickly realized that we can't do that. So we're still in the middle of taking this one apart, and then we'll press this all back together. Alright, we got the new yoke installed. I put a very light coat of grease on it just because I wanted to. I couldn't find anywhere to tell me to do that. It just seemed like the thing to do. So we're going to get it installed in the car now. Okay, drive shaft inserted with no problem. They get those straps on. We got to put the car in neutral. They have you have it in reverse while you're installing it. We're going to put it in neutral. I still put fluid in it, so I'm going to put fluid in it just for peace of mind before we start spinning it to get these drive shaft straps on. Okay, fluid's filled. The fill and drain ports are a standard 3/8 ratchet, and here's our drive shaft, and our straps are all torqued down, so we're good there. There we go. We're getting there. Alright, getting working on putting the exhaust back in. You have to obtain your own bolts for the stock exhaust hanger that goes up to here. We've learned that they're 5/16 by 18 is what you need for that. So that's what we're working on now. They have you run the bolts from the top. The bracket that they supply goes over the top. We'll get to that in a minute. Alright, so here's the supplied bracket. The fatter end, or the larger end, is going to go up over top. Okay, and you're going to use those 5/16 by 18 bolts, and you're going to come down from the top and go through the thread and secure that down. So that's what we're working on now. So we've decided to go with just a 1/2 inch bolt with a little blue Loctite. Again, you're coming up from the top, and it gives thread pretty much all the way down through the transmission bracket. Alright, next we're taking the stock exhaust hanger and bolting that up to the bracket that came in the kit. which we bolted to the other bracket that came in the kit. So they say use your original bolts here with new nuts and washers. We just opted to go with all new bolts, nuts, and washers, and I stuck the restuck the old bolts with the transmission. I don't know. So that's what we're working on getting done now. There's your orientation. It's all outlined in the instructions. Okay, the stock exhaust hanger is up, and we're going to start putting the exhaust back on. I just threw thread restorers over the studs and through the nuts to make sure that those are all set. And while we're under here, we just threw in a new oil filter, drain the oil. We'll top that off when we get the car down. So right now we're going to work on putting the downpipe and catalytic converter back in. Alright, downpipe and catalytic converter is installed. Here I had to install a new carrier for my parking brake because I ended up breaking this trying to get it apart in attempts to get the torque beam in. Full disclosure, I'm not sure I needed to do that, but by the time I got the torque beam in, that was already broke. So Corvette Central has them, 18 bucks. Alright, so we're going to put the cat back on. We got the stock hanger here, and the bracket on the exhaust here is way too low, or this bracket is way too high. So in trying to figure out why, Dom noticed how much the cat is pointing downward now, which leads me to think that our bracket here from Silver Sport is in the wrong direction. Now we went by the pictures in the instructions, but I believe we need to flip it so it's going up and back to raise the catalytic up and make those match. So that's what we're gonna try. Alright, we got updates. So in order to get the exhaust where it needs to be, that is how close it needs to get. That's how far up it needs to go. The stock exhaust bracket, just down here, this will not even fit up there, rendering this bracket that we have here useless. So we're supporting the catalytic in the center. Everything else is attached exactly where it's supposed to be. The height looks perfect. Everything fits great. Except I have to figure out a way to hang the center of the exhaust off that bracket. So here we are. Alright, it's quite a few hours later. This is what I've come up with so far. The flipping the bracket from Silver Sport around, excuse the lighting, sorry, didn't work with all of the with the stock mount. So I went to O'Reilly's Advance and AutoZone and picked up every universal exhaust hanger that I could find, and you can see how we flipped the Silver Sport bracket over, and then this is a very modified exhaust hanger that I got from one of the stores and attached to part of the stock hanger. So this is what I got right now. It's not perfect. I have an email into Silver Sport. I want to see what they say about this. So I'll let you know. Alright, so here's the exhaust hanger that I came up with. Now it utilizes the clamp around the stock clamp around the exhaust, the stock heat shield. They cut the top of the clamp off, the stock clamp, and I mated it to this piece here with the isolator. I'm just trying to show that a little bit. and you can see it's bolted there to the Silver Sport bracket, which is opposite direction of how it's instructed to be. So it seems pretty secure. I'm hoping that'll hold up. I don't have any of the wiring done yet, but I am going to put this on the ground and temporarily put the driver's seat in so I can start the car and see what we got. Okay, off camera we put the distributor back together, the MAF sensor, all that. I put the seat in temporarily. I'm happy to say she has started. So it seems to be running good. Don't worry about that little chirp. We're going to take care of that another day. So I'm going to make an attempt now to see how the new clutch and transmission engages. Well, we got something. So far, so good. Gotta love Massachusetts. People can't use directions. So remember, we got new clutch, new flywheel, obviously the new transmission. I'm obviously going very easy on it, but it's shifting good. I don't hear any crunching, grinding. Successful as a transmission sure moves up and down a lot. Well, I'll take that as a successful first test drive. So that's going to do it for part 3 of the C4 TKX swap. Appreciate y'all watching this far into the series. A little bit shorter of a video today, but I thought that's a great, high note to end on with that successful test drive. The car did well. I didn't see or hear any major issues. I did notice I'm going to trim the tunnel hole a little bit, forgetting that the shifter is now mounted directly to the transmission. There's more movement, or there is movement, I should say. With the stock Doug Nash, and the shifter was mounted to the body, and those shift rods went through to the transmission. So with that movement, I happened to notice the rubber boot that sits on top of that billet piece for the transmission is really tight, and I think rubbing over time, the rubber might split or get damaged. So I'm going to trim that up a little bit, and I may trim around the that third bolt a little bit as well. Again, just with that movement, it's pretty close. As far as that exhaust hanger goes, I'm pretty confident with what I came up with. I have been going back and forth with Silver Sport Transmissions. They actually did call me because I've been sending them videos and questions and everything. And one of the things that I found interesting was that they did admit that they have not done a full swap, a TKX swap on a C4. They did it on the TKO, and then they modified the kit in-house for the TKX, but they had not actually done a TKX swap. They state they're going to try and get a C4 in their shop to do the swap to see if they can recreate those issues and re-engineer them. I guess that is what it is. Again, I'm not, even with that, I'm not unhappy that I'm doing this kit. I think it's a quality product. I was a little concerned, or I was surprised, I should say, not really concerned, just that they just for their own benefit, that they wouldn't have done that. But I did offer them for them to come out here to Massachusetts to my shop and check out the kit. It's sitting right here on the lift, but they didn't take me up on it. So the bolt provision, I think that's just a matter of they're going to update their instructions and tell you got to make that hole bigger. There was one fellow C4 owner online that mentioned that they saw that same issue and they just made their hole bigger and no big deal. The torque beam is pretty tight to the side of the car. I did discuss that with them. Apparently, again, people on the forum have said that they have a similar thing and it hasn't been an issue. I didn't notice any vibrations or anything. Again, I've only done a few miles. I showed you part of my test drive. I've only done a few miles on it, and obviously we'll do more before we do a final review on how it performs. But yeah, I mean, they definitely have to re-engineer that exhaust hanger for somebody that wants to use stock exhaust, because it just doesn't work. So anyways, that being said, stay tuned for part 4, which is probably going to be the final part. And in that, we're going to make those trim modifications to the tunnel. And I have to do the wiring. So we have the speed sensor wiring, so the speedometer works, and we got to put in that Dakota signal system. So we'll do that. We have to do the reverse light wiring, and we'll make sure we get that all tightened up. And really, though, that little bit of wiring underneath, anyways, is it for the bottom of the car, underneath the car, so we can pull it off the lift. And then we got to button up the interior. I have to shape that tunnel piece. We're gonna have to paint that, get that set in, and then put the interior back together. I'm going to most likely put a few more miles on the car before I button up the interior, because you're supposed to rivet that metal panel into the car, and I don't want, and silicone and everything. So before I seal that up permanently, I'm probably gonna make sure I put some more miles in the car. And so that's about it. Look forward to seeing you in part 4. Thanks for watching.